Everybody, welcome back to Final Resonance TV and episode number 6 of Van Halen Stories. Today, my guest is Greg Leon. Greg is a Sunset Strip guitarist veteran. Was with Dokken in the early days before George Lynch was in it, and part of Quiet Riot, well, the Dubrow version of Quiet Riot. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So Quiet Riot after Randy Rhoads left and went with Ozzy.
Right.
Right. And of course, Sweet 19 with Tommy Lee as your drummer at one point.
Yep.
And the Greg Leon Invasion. And how I really found out about you the first time was in this documentary, Inside Metal, that covers the 70s and 80s scene in LA, and all the players that I heard names over the years mentioned by a lot of different people. And you're one of those guys. So, and you're in that documentary. And that's kind of where I first saw you, knew about you. But, one of the things we're going to talk about today is Eddie Van Halen. Of course, this is a year, since Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
A year since he passed, right? Last week,
Yeah.
the last couple of days. And you were at one of people talk about, in the Van Halen community, people talk about this all the time because Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen co-build a show with Quiet Riot opening. Van Halen was the headliner. They had just gotten signed, from what I've read. And
No, they weren't signed yet, I don't think.
Okay.
I didn't think.
Yeah, it was April 23rd of 77 at Glendale College. Are you still in Glendale?
I am in La Crescenta. I just went by the college. I was coming back from a photojournalist friend of mine, John Harold's place, and I decided to take side streets because I knew I had this interview and I wanted to get something to eat. And I went by the college and I looked at it. I cannot pass it without thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because I was such at the time before I saw Quiet Riot and Van Halen, I was like the big guy in town. And, I had a band and we played every weekend at house parties. Mm-hmm. And 200, 300, 400 people would show up, every single weekend, sometimes Friday and Saturday.
Right.
And I went to see that show. And my drummer at the time was the head custodian for the Glendale Unified School District. And earlier in the day, he went by there and put some reserved things on the seat, which was totally bogus. So we had right front row center. Right. So, we bought our $2 tickets or whatever, $1.75, whatever it was cheap. And we went right to the front and, Quiet Riot comes out and they were great. I went backstage. I introduced myself, met Randy and Kevin and Drew. And Drew, I'm still friends with. I went and spent 9 days in Hawaii with him a couple of years ago. We had our birthdays together. Awesome. And then after that, in the meantime of trying to meet Randy, I went accidentally into Van Halen's dressing room, and there they were. And I go, "Hey, is Randy here?" And Dave goes, "No, man, they're down the hall, man." So I met Dave and Eddie that first night. Didn't really get to talk to him too much that night. Yeah. But about a year later, I did see them. Actually, let me back up a little bit. I had met them earlier, but I didn't know who they were. I was playing a party at the, the Chevy Chase Country Club, and there was about 300 people there in the rec room there. A friend of mine, Martin Oliver, was having a party. And I'm playing, and I look over and I see these guys standing in the doorway. And I go, well, that's weird. I never saw them before. They must be in a band, And then I took a little break and they come over to me. And I was playing a 1963 Fender Jaguar at the time. And I was always into Frank Marino and Jimi Hendrix and, Richie Blackmore and all the real guitar players that really played. And so I was doing the dive bomb stuff, and I had this Fender Jaguar. And the guy asked me, came over and both of them were standing there. And like, "Hey, man, how do you get that thing to go down so low?" And I said, "Well, there's a spring inside of the tremolo thing. I pulled it out really far with a pair of pliers, and I put it back in there. And then I have the arm up, so it's got a lot more travel, and I can get the strings to really loosen up." And okay, I didn't know who they were. They didn't introduce themselves. So I go to that concert at Glendale Glendale College.
Yeah.
And they walk out. I go, "Shit, there they are. That's those guys that were at my show." But they hadn't even played a note yet. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, my God. And there's Dave Roth, who was like, at the time, the sexiest guy frontman there was, and he was just, it was so magnetic and so magical to see them. And Eddie was just like this, what in the hell? Who plays like that? It was just so different. Because I came from the Johnny Winter, Richie Blackmore, Jimi Hendrix, Frank Marino school of playing. And, I was based all my stuff around that stuff. And this guy comes out of there with all these weird patterns he's playing. And to look at, it didn't even make sense, but it sure sounded good. and he had that tone. And his tone was actually pretty trebly, if I remember. There wasn't a lot of bottom in it, but man, they were solid. The dry, everything was just perfect. It was like, wow, seeing, Randy Rhoads and him together on the same night, it was like, okay, I got to up my game a bit, because these guys are a little bit ahead of me. We started playing all the time. And
I was gonna say these parties, these Van Halen played a lot of these backyard parties. It seemed like we had them here in the South, but it seemed like it was a bigger thing out west.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, we would play parties 3, 4, a couple of times 500 people showed up. There was one guy that had a ranch up in Big Conga Canyon, and he built a big stage for us, and he had flyers everywhere, and he charged like $2 to get in, and there was kegs of beer. Mm-hmm. That place, there must have been 2,000 or 3,000 people there. It was, everybody, it was incredible. It started at like 3 o'clock, and we didn't play till the sun went down. He had lights and stuff, but people would do stuff like that back then. And
right.
The cops came and busted it up because you couldn't even drive down to Tuna Canyon. There was too many cars. And it was just fun, man, just fun. I just miss those days and the excitement. And just, and part of it was you were working towards, stardom and the big time. And, it's all going to lead to something. And
did you know about Eddie before you saw him at all?
It's funny. I did not, but all of my friends did. But nobody told me or nothing about him. And I didn't find out that they were all going to Van Halen concerts. I don't know if they thought I'd be jealous if they were going to check out some other guitar player or what, but for some reason they kept it from me. And I didn't know of him until I saw him play at the Glendale College.
So that was just out of the blue. You never even saw him?
Never saw him, no.
In this band?
Yeah, it was like, wow, there was pretty amazing.
Guys, when you discovered Van Halen, and then you knew Randy before this, right?
Yeah, I knew Randy. Well, I met him the night of the Van Halen Quiet Riot show at Glendale College, but I didn't actually get to hang out with him or really talk to him and find out that he loved the way I played. They used to show up at my parties sometimes, him and Kevin and Drew. But I didn't know him until the start when we did a show with them where we opened up for Quiet Riot for 3 days. And Randy and I just kind of hit it off. And, he gave me his phone number and we became friends. And I ended up, when he went with Ozzy, teaching at Musoni, his mother's music school. Yeah. And what a nice guy. He was just such a genuinely warm person and just a nice guy. Just never, if he had anything bad to say about somebody, it was in jest, and he had a joke coming along with it. So he was just a nice guy. And
let me ask you about the rivalry between Van Halen and Quiet Riot.
There was none. That's bullshit. There was no rivalry. Randy didn't care about Eddie, and Eddie Scherzel didn't give a shit about Randy. They were doing their own things. Kevin and I had talks about this, and he just said, let them talk, man. Let them think there was some rivalry. It's good for, it's good for the business, but there wasn't. Right. They did that one show together. That was it. And neither one of them had probably seen each other play until then. In fact, a buddy of mine, God, who is it? One of my good friends, I can't remember which guy it is. He worked at Tower Records on what do you call it? In Hollywood on Sunset. Mm-hmm. And when, anyways, Randy went, was it Kevin or Randy? It was either Randy or Eddie went in as soon as the day that, I think it was Diary of a Madman got released. So it must have been Eddie went in there and bought Diary of a Madman. At least that's what my friend said.
That's what I heard.
I can't remember. There's so many stories. It's hard to remember.
I think Randy saw this. Randy was there and he saw it, right?
Maybe.
That was what the story was that I read. Yeah. So they didn't have a rivalry. The gear that those guys were using. This is a funny thing that this gentleman that hooked us up, Colin. Yeah. We were talking gear. That's how I ended up with you. But those guys apparently like Chris Holmes. The Van Halen cabinets. It seems that those were Chris Holmes's at one point.
They were Chris Holmes, and he used to lend them to me a couple times for Starwood shows. And I go, why'd you strip all the covering off them? He goes, because they're all stolen. This way they can't identify them.
Wow, really?
Oh, yeah. He lent them to me, and I have a picture of them in my living room where I grew up on Jackson Street in Glendale. Yeah. Somewhere this picture exists of me standing in front of him as a 19-year-old kid,
Right.
with all the stuff on the Van Halen thing, and it's all in my living room, and it's just wall to wall amps. And now I own, 5 stacks, but that's besides the point. Back then, nobody had that kind of stuff.
Right.
That was
So,
crazy to have that many Marshalls.
so Chris would just lend these out.
Yep. And
And
I had another buddy of mine, Joe Valasay, used to loan Eddie amp heads. Joe had some orange heads there's pictures of him with those.
yeah.
Those were Joe Valasay's, and I guess Joe gave me a pair of OR 120s and 4 cabinets. One just gave them to me when we played in a band, and I hated them.
Yeah.
I thought they sounded like shit. They were just so loud and so clean. You couldn't get in that zone. It was like peeling the paint off the wall, like ice picks in your ear.
So the Marshalls that Colin has, that one that he just got.
The white one.
Yeah.
Wow. What an amp.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I heard it. He sent me a clip, and I guess the story was that it got borrowed. These are again borrowing amps, and there was even a story where a guy, and this fact, Greg Renoff. I don't know if you know Greg.
Yeah, sure.
Greg told me the story about somebody borrowing Eddie's Magic Marshall, the '68, and that the guy just came over to the house, grabbed it, and threw it in the back of a truck and took off with it. I mean, they just apparently didn't care about sharing with each other.
No, this stuff back then, it was just all stuff. There was no, like now. I mean, I own the actual amp that Eddie did the Beat It solo with for Michael Jackson.
Okay.
And it came to me because I was doing amp repairs for Andy Brower's Studio Instrument Rentals.
Yeah.
And Eddie, they had called and said, Eddie's going to be in town. He needs this type of amp. Do you have it? And Andy calls me up and says, hey, bring your amp in. And will you loan it? Will you rent it to Eddie for $100? And I'm fuck yeah, I'll rent it to Eddie for $100. And so I brought it out to Andy, and it went in, did the solo. The next day or 2 days later, I get my amp back, $100 bill. And for some reason, and I thought I put it in a plastic Ziploc bag and put it inside of the amp underneath. It's not there. I don't know what happened to the receipt on that. I have looked everywhere through all of my scrapbooks and everything. I don't know what happened to it.
Wow.
But that is my amp that he used on the Beat It solo on the
so I think the story was that he was on tour and you didn't have an amp. Okay.
That's right. His stuff was all on tour. He flew in from New York. They picked him up at the airport. They took him to the studio. He did the solo, took him back to the airport, and he went back and, finished his tour.
What kind of amp was it?
Marshall 100-watt super bass that I had modified a little bit. A 71 super bass 100-watt head.
Suckers are clean, man. I had one for a while.
Yeah, this one's killer.
Did you guys just crank the heck out of it, or was there any?
Oh yeah. I have a master volume in it, but yeah, it's pretty. If you get it up there and you put a little booster in front of it, like a
EP,
like a green Rhino. That's what I like to use, a green Rhino.
Okay. From
Way Huge Electronics. I think that's the overall best overdrive going right now.
Okay.
But back then, I don't know what he was using. OD1 or something like that back in the day. Yeah. You put that in front of it, it's heaven. I mean, you were in the zone.
Right. Randy's gear at the time, when he had, you said this in another interview about a PV and an Ampeg. And, I've seen pictures of the PV, some of that stuff in Musonia. There was pictures of some of this stuff.
That's his stuff. That's the right stuff. So Randy and I had the same roadie at the time. And it was my roadie, then it became Randy and mine's. And that was Brian Reason. But anyways, Randy had a PV solid state head that had absolutely no distortion. It was so clinical sounding. It was like a PA head type of thing. It was horrible.
Right.
And he had a 412 Ampeg cabinet with L-Tech speakers in it.
Right.
And the way he got his distortion was through an MXR Distortion Plus, and that was his sound. And I remember when he got the gig with Ozzy, and I'd always tease him about that. Go, why in the hell are you using that head? That's my sound, man. That's my sound, So anyways, he gets the gig with Ozzy. He's got to get a Marshall head for rehearsals. They don't want him using that head.
Right.
Calls me up and goes, man, can I borrow your head? And I go, yeah, sure, man. How long do you need it for? Because I don't know, like a weekend or so. I ended up getting like 2 weeks later. But anyways, he goes, man, I'm so scared of losing my sound. And I took him by the shoulders, the little shoulder. I go, Randy, you don't even have a sound. That's not a sound, dude. That's just what you're used to. I go, a Distortion Plus and a solid state head is not your sound. And it was weird because if you stood right in front of him, it would blow your head off. If you went 3 feet this way or 3 feet the other way, it was just normal sounding. It was so directional, it was uncanny. Right. And it would just knock you over. I mean, that's why he'd always be going to those places. It was just so loud in front of him, but he's trying to get those speakers to break up, I guess, because you're not going to break up LTEX.
So he ends up with this Marshall. It's late 70s, right? Maybe 80. The white one he had. There was a 22, like a JCM 800 early version. And he still used the Distortion Plus in front of it, though.
Yeah, he never could get away from that. And it cracked me up because he would put his wah-wah after that.
Oh, yeah.
Go, wow, wow. It didn't even sound like a wah-wah. It was just like a filter. But that's the sound he wanted. I go, dude, let me change this for you. This isn't right. And he didn't like it the other way. He wanted to not to be used as a wah, but just like a filter thing going. And you can hear it on the Ozzy records and stuff. But that's what he wanted. So good for him,
Let me ask you about Schenker back then. Michael Schenker, there's stories of UFO coming into town and Van Halen playing with them. Did you know about him or?
I knew about Michael. I've met Michael a few times. First time I actually got to hang with him and talk to him, I was playing at a club called FM Station in North Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And funnily enough, my wife was working there at the time as a waitress, but I didn't know her. But that's besides. But anyways, so I'm on stage playing, and I look out there and I keep seeing this guy staring at me, and I go, "Fuck, man, that is Michael. That's gotta be Michael Schenker." And I'm thinking this while I'm singing the whole time. So I finish and I go backstage, and you got to go up on stage past the drum riser, and that's where the dressing room was. So I was back there, and all of a sudden in walks Michael Schenker. He goes, "Hello, I want to tell you, my name is Michael Schenker. It's very nice to meet you. I got to tell you that your vibrato is so beautiful, and your phrasing, you are the best phrasing I've seen in LA. I really enjoyed your playing." And I go, "Oh my God, this is like the best compliment I've ever had in my life." Right. So I go, "Michael, would you please stay here while I go get the guys in my band, because they're never going to believe this." So I'm waiting back. I go, and he waits there in the dressing room, and I go, and I can't find my guys. They're packing up, and helping load in the equipment van and stuff. And I finally get him back about 20 minutes later, and Michael's sitting in there, and he told him that. He waited all that time. I couldn't believe it. I just hugged him. I go, "Dude, you just made my life." Because he's so great. I mean, it's so soulful.
Yeah,
he's such a different guitar player, man. So different.
He's always had like you said, he said about you, the phrasing and the touch of him. Yeah. It's just I was turned on to him early when I first started playing, and he was like the first instrumentalist that I knew about. I know that you think about people before that were instrumentalists, but for me he was like the guy before Satriani, the guy before Vibe. Yeah. He was doing that a long time ago.
Oh yeah, no,
of course you'd say Uli, was before that even, or right, in the early days, 60s.
Only problem was Uli wanted to sing. Why would he want to do that? He's such a great guitar player. I have a funny story about Uli. Yeah. I went to UCLA. He was doing a concert there, and a buddy of mine, Greg Master Giovanni, invited me, and we were backstage, and Don Dokken was there. So Don and I are catching up, and Don's going to get up and do a song with Uli. And I've always been a early Scorpions fan. I love that. I got turned on to them by Chris Holmes, and Chris Holmes got turned on to him by Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen gave Chris those records, and then Chris loaned them to me, and I told him he's never getting them back, and I never gave them back because I loved it so much. Wow. But so anyway, so I told Uli about that, and so anyways, they were trying to find people to go out and sing the songs with him because he's a horrible singer. And so Don went out and did a song, and Don said, "You should get Greg to come out. He's probably the best singer here." And they had all these other guys there, and I was supposed to go out and sing a Cream song with them. And everybody knows Cream stuff, and
right.
I can sing pretty much any style except the Cookie Monster stuff. But anyways, anyways, I getting ready to go out, and Don still, to get Greg out there. Greg will knock it out of the park, So he doesn't want me to do it because he's never heard me sing. Right. And he gets somebody else out there, and we go back afterwards, and Don's just going, "You should have had Greg do that. It would have been so much better." And then Uli's going, "Greg, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." He's a really polite guy, and so I go, "Dude, don't even worry about it. It doesn't even matter." And I think Warren DeMartini played that night, and the bass player from the Firm, I can't think of his name right now.
Tony Franklin.
Tony Franklin played, and I think there was a few drummers. And it was really fun. I mean, it was just really fun. It would have been better if I got to play with them or sing with them, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Let me ask you about Roth and DeBro, as personalities. Now, I interviewed Missy Whitney. You know Missy?
I know Missy really well, yeah.
Okay, so Missy, Missy and I went down the rabbit hole with Kevin DeBro. They were doing a new book, and she's doing a new book it's a photo book of Kevin and some of her stuff and some of Mark Wise's stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we got a little bit in the weeds about Kevin and about his personality. Of course, I knew a lot of the stuff just from the magazines and whatever. Contrast Roth with DeBro as frontman. I always kind of felt like they were kind of similar in their style, but you would know.
Well, David Lee Roth, in my opinion, was the best hard rock frontman ever. I mean, he was super athletic. I mean, he did stuff nobody had done, flying through the air with his legs and his arms out and doing the kicks and stuff and all this stuff. Kevin, I think, wanted to be Rod Stewart meets Freddie Mercury. And that was who we got, and Steve Marriott. We love Steve Marriott.
That's true. He said
Steve Marriott didn't move a lot on stage because he's like me. He's stuck in a microphone. Yeah. Kevin was a good frontman because, for one, he was very interesting looking.
Yeah.
He had a really unique voice, but Dave Roth had that look. I mean, he was a really good looking guy. Girls loved that guy.
Right.
He had a really good gift at gab. He was funny as hell. He always was never at a loss for words. Frontman wise, I mean, Dave Roth had it over all of them.
Right.
He wasn't a great singer. He never was a great singer.
Right.
But he had that thing, and that thing only happens once in a billion people. He could hold an audience in the palm of his hand. I don't know if you ever saw Van Halen, where he starts, the band's taking a break and he's talking before. You're hanging on every word. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to miss a word. Shh, shh, shh. Oh, he's talking. You're just hanging on every word, and he's hilarious. I mean, I've met Dave a few times. My wife knows him really well. My wife used to date Terry Kilgore, who played in the band with the David Lee Roth band. Yeah,
which is Eddie's buddy. That apparently the two of them were this is another story that you probably know, but the tapping thing either came from Harvey Mandel or Terry. I don't know whether Terry picked that up or there was Chris Holmes was involved in this.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Tell me.
Chris Holmes was either painting Harvey Mandel's play. I think he was doing his lawn, cutting his lawn. And Harvey lived over here in La Crescenta, apparently. Mm-hmm. I never met him. I don't know him. I didn't even know who he was till I heard these stories. But Chris told me he was, cutting the lawn, and he hears him in there practicing, and he sees him doing this tapping thing. And he didn't invent that either. There's a guy in the 40s doing that videos. But anyways, they had never seen it before, was the important thing.
Right.
And he showed Chris how to do it. And Chris went and showed Terry. And I don't know if Terry went over there and found out how to do it. And then they showed Eddie, and Eddie took it and just took it to a whole nother level. I mean, they just did the simple, easy stuff. And Eddie was doing, all these pinch harmonics and all these, not even real harmonics or false harmonics you can get out of a guitar string, but really spent hours and hours and months and years perfecting this whole otherworldly sounds, and
did you see any tapping at that show that you saw?
No.
Okay.
No, I did not see any tapping. I would have remembered that, and I don't remember. I'd love to hear that if there was a copy of that recording of that, I'd love to hear it, but I don't remember him doing that. If he did, he must have turned around and I couldn't see what he was doing, which Alex said that Eddie would turn around because they didn't want somebody stealing it from him.
But most people say a lot of sense. Most people say that there was a time when they got signed and both him and Roth had some time off because the record company didn't want him out there playing so much. And that seems like when Tappan showed up there somewhere after you saw them in 77, like later on, because they were, I don't know if they were signed at that point, but it wasn't long after because they were in the studio in 77 because the record came out in February of 78. So somewhere in that 6-month period, he perfected this thing from both you and went.
The first time I actually saw it and it made sense to me where, okay, that's what's going on. I went and saw Black Oak, Arkansas at the Starwood, and they were playing, I think, under a different name, but they had some guitar player named Sean Lane. It was this like 15-year-old kid, and he was doing all that stuff. And the kid was amazing. I mean, he was just like, wow, this is one of the best guitar players I've ever seen. I got a funny Ingve story too that this just reminded me of. But I remember seeing that and I went home and figured out what he was doing. And then I incorporated that for a few years into my plan. And then I just quit doing it because it's like, Eddie's already done it and he does it better than anybody. Why would you even try to do that? It's just stupid, you know?
You said Sean Lane. You mean Sean Lane from Memphis, Tennessee?
I think that's where he's from.
Yeah. So then you were saying something about Ingve, because I was going to ask you. Tell me about when Ingve hit in L.A. and what that was like.
I'll tell you exactly what it was like. I was opening up for him at his first show when he was with Steeler.
Okay.
And we played at the Troubadour. And I remember people coming up to me because we did our sound check, and people like 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 people came up to me, dude, hang around because you got to see this next guitar player coming. He's out of this world. It's like nothing you ever seen. So I'm thinking, oh, great. Okay, here we go again. Another 6-shooter coming to, steal my throne or kill me, So I sit there and I watch this sound check, and he comes up with I think it was a 50-watt half stack Marshall and 1 pedal, and killing it, just killing it. And I'm sitting up there just going, Jesus, how in the hell can anybody play that fast, that articulate, and the sweeps he was doing? I mean, he was a kid. He was like 19, just insane. So they get done with their sound check. I see him go upstairs. I follow him upstairs to meet him. He's on one leg tying a shoe, and I walk up to him and I put my hand. I go, dude, I got to tell you, man, you're probably the best guitar player I've ever seen. And he looks up and goes, yeah, I know. And he went back to tying his shoe, never shook my hand, nothing. So flash forward years later, we have a mutual friend, and we all went to dinner, and Ingve's there. And so and then we went to see him at the Avalon. I think it was the Avalon Ballroom, and I think it's called that in Hollywood on Vine Street. And we're backstage, and it's the crew and me and my buddy, that's the mutual friend. And so we're all telling stories and stuff. I go, I got one for you. So I tell the story, but yeah, I know, and not shaking my hand or nothing. And his wife, and he had his shirt open, and his big guts hanging out. And his wife, I can't think of her name right now. April, thank you. Yeah. And beautiful hair. She has the most amazing hair. But anyways, she goes up and slaps him on the chest so hard I felt it. And there's a big red welt there. And she's going, I told you cannot be an asshole to people because nobody forgets that. And he looks at me and goes, Greg, did I really say that to you? I go, absolutely. And he goes, I go, dude, no, that's one of the best stories ever. I love it. I love that story. I'm glad it happened,
Wow. Yeah. That's cool. That was his first show with Steeler. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. He was something else, man. It was amazing. It was amazing.
I remember when that album came out, and this, it was like another shift like Eddie was. It was
absolutely. Unfortunately, and I told him this, and he probably thought I was on drugs or crazy or something. I go, you need to bring in an outside writer. Mm-hmm. You need to get some hooks, and so you need to get radio play. Mm-hmm. This music is never going to go to the radio because there's it's all only for guitar players.
Yeah.
And, I've seen him probably 6, 7 times now, and embarrassing to say, and I'm a guitar player and I love guitars. It's been my whole life since I was 12. I can't stand through one of his whole shows. I leave because it's just too much. You got to let that guitar breathe. You got to hold one string and shake it. Mm-hmm. You got to say something instead of just this barrage. It's like coming in and somebody's just slapping you in the face. They just keep slapping you in the face. Pretty soon you're going to, I got to get out of here, man. I can't take it.
What's funny about Ingve, though, is he can play slow.
He's great. He's the best blues guitar player around, but he doesn't do it.
I know. I love watching him. So he has some of the slower instrumentals he did in the early days. They're beautiful. Yeah. Some of the solos like Save Our Love, which is a beautiful ballad he did, had a gorgeous solo that had all the elements in it that he did so well. And but he's always stuck to what he does, And it is even today bewildering to watch for a little while. Like you said.
If you go online and you just punch in Ingve lessons or something like that, and sometimes a Friday night or any night you're bored, oh hell, I'm gonna just go watch some stuff. And he said, I'll slow it down, and it's still so fast you can't even. What the hell? How did you slow that down? Nobody can still get it. He's just so far away from conventional thought and abilities.
Yeah, I was going to say, like a lot of guys, I just recently, and I never had done a tribute band to the Van Halen ever, but even being the fan that I am, but when I had to deep dive all the songs, it was like, some of the stuff just doesn't, if you grew up learning scales or anything traditional,
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to you. So
It's all patterns. It's patterns, just weird patterns that repeat themselves.
Yeah, and it takes you a while to get into his thing. And even though I've picked up his stock kind of improv licks over the year, there's still stuff like what did he do? And we're still trying to figure out some of those licks.
Yeah, and he loved. Oh God, what was that guy that he loved that passed away? I can't think of his name.
Alan
Holdsworth. That's a guy I've tried to get into. I cannot get into that at all. His music does not speak to me at all.
Right.
It does absolutely nothing for me but make me want to turn it off because it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
It's just too weird, and
yeah. But he picked up a lot of those like those wild stretches, patterns like he did, and he made that, he took from that, I guess, some of those unorthodox ideas. I mean, he already had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Like to say the Ice Cream Man stretch, that big thing.
That's the weirdest riff, man, isn't that?
I can't. I mean, I don't know how.
I know, me. I'm trying. I can't figure it out. Yeah, I think I'm doing it right, but it never sounds right. It's backwards and forwards in the pull-ups with that. It's crazy.
Yeah. What was your favorite? What was your favorite Van Halen song?
Song?
Yeah.
Oh God. Probably something off of Van Halen 2. Even though I love Van Halen 1, there's was it?
Yeah, Out of Love.
Oh, what the hell's the name of that?
Out of Love.
Out of Love. It's got the best guitar solo I think he ever did.
That's that.
Man, it is just
no tapping either. No tapping, just shred, man.
And he's just in that zone, and you can just feel how he's just right in there, and it's just coming out of him, emotion. And it's so different, especially when he bends on the beats on the E string at the B fret up above, and he goes way high to the D. It's just like, how did that come about? It's just so tasty, and then that riff right after that, where he just gets it's real tight. Oh man, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I've tried to sit down and learn that, man. The feel of it, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's it. The feel that was from his heart. I mean. That's a weird, and then the way he mutes it, Paul mutes it when he's doing that, gets all those. It's just awesome, man. I get excited about it.
Yeah, I saw play that the other day. Put a cover of playing the solo. Brian Tishy, Brian Tishy, the drummer.
Yeah,
he was playing that solo to that.
Really?
He got pretty damn close. I was like, damn, man.
Wow,
that's a tough one.
Cool.
That's a tough one. So that solo and that solo and song is your favorite
off the second record, and that might. And obviously somebody get me a doctor. It's just such a wonderful, you can't be in a bad mood. I don't care if you just had your foot run over and you're screaming, you hear that song. Oh yeah. I feel good now. This song just gets you pumped up. It's incredible.
So let's talk about the guitars that going back with Eddie's stripes pattern and all that. Did you know anything about that? You just saw it, right? You saw it.
I just saw it. He was just probably trying to do something different to make him stand out and rememberable.
But what happened? What happened with that was everybody like you went to that yellow guitar, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it was like with Grover and Charvel and all of that. What happened with Eddie was it seemed like everybody wanted to make their own statement in their guitar with the look.
Yep, exactly. I remember going out to Charvel one time, and it was about Van Halen's second record or something like that. Well, he had those guitars Grover had made for him, the red and yellow one, black and yellow.
Yeah.
And then there was the one with the dots on it, the black dots on the white. Well, I actually played that guitar before Eddie got it. I saw it there, and they goes, "This is Eddie's. We made it for Eddie's, picking him up tomorrow." Or
how about the Unchained guitar, the one that he played in the video?
I don't know.
Did it have?
I don't know. It was a Strat style body, one humbucker, but it was the one with the silver. I mean, the round dots on it, bigger and smaller dots.
Yeah.
And it was just a very cool guitar, very different. I don't think he used it very long. But I just remember I got to play it before Eddie even saw it and played it, and I just remember thinking, man, this is pretty damn cool.
I mean, you talking about this one, right?
That's it. That's exactly it.
So you're saying Grover Jackson made this?
Yeah.
And he painted that?
Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that. I see you later.
Yeah, I saw that out there, and also the Bumblebee one was right next to it.
Okay, right before he got it, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I picked it up and played it, and I always thought that Charvel guitars sounded great,
Yeah.
but I didn't like the necks on them. They were too flat. You know,
Uh-huh.
I was more traditional, like a Les Paul or a Fender neck, and
Right.
they were wide and flat, and it just never felt right. I played them, but they never got me in that zone. You know, I never used them on any recordings or anything like that. In fact, I don't even own one of them anymore. I wish I still had them all.
Did
Because they're
you
worth a book
on that
now.
particular guitar? Did it have a wide flat neck?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was the
Yeah,
typical kind
as
of
I remember, I mean, I played it for maybe 2 minutes.
right.
I
Right.
picked it up and, you know, just bent the strings a few times and put it back, you know, because it was Eddie's. It wasn't mine.
I always thought that Eddie painted that, but you say that Grover painted it.
I saw it out at Grover, so I assumed that his painter, I
Ernie.
can't think of
Ernie.
Ernie. I think Ernie painted it. Yeah.
Wow. I have to. I think Ernie is a friend of mine. I have to reach out to Ernie.
Yeah. Is he still alive? How's he doing?
He's doing okay from what I could tell. He's retired, but
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah, but he drops in on Grover. I think Grover moved.
He did. He's in Laguna Beach, and he paints all of the guitars himself out there.
Is he in Laguna? Did he? I thought he didn't move from California though.
No.
Okay, because he kept telling me that he was going to move back to Nashville or Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know, and I just ran into him and I reminded him about all the stuff, you know, and but it wasn't this NAMM show and it wasn't the last one. It was the second one, not the last one they had, but the one before that. And it was funny because I hadn't seen him in forever. And I just stood next to him for the longest time. I didn't say anything to him. I'm just standing there. And all of a sudden he looks at me, he goes, Greg? I go, fuck yeah, it's Greg. What are you doing? So we hugged each other and we're talking, reminiscing. I had a couple of buddies with me and my wife.
Right.
And we were reminiscing about the old days and how fun it was when you never knew who was going to walk through that door out at Charvel. And I remember I had a bass player named Jack Cole in a band I had called Fever.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted a custom bass. And I said, dude, I know the guy. So
Right.
we went out there and he designed a bass that was pink with black tiger stripes on it. And it was a bass neck through. Amazing bass. Gave me such a great deal on it. And, you know, they were normally back then like $1,200. I think he let me have it for $500 or $600 with a case. I mean, everything had a tremolo arm on it too.
Oh wow.
Who the hell had a Kaler on a bass back then?
Right.
And I got a bunch of pictures of us on stage with that guitar, that bass.
Wow.
And,
Yeah, Grover, you know, me and Grover sat down and I asked him every question about every player that he ever worked with. You know, everybody from Eddie all the way through Neil Sean and Randy Rose and everybody that had, you know, dealt with. I think he was telling me, I think it was a guitar player played his maybe it was Michael Jackson's guitar player played his Charvel on stage and his parents finally, huh?
The girl or the guy?
I think I'm not sure. This was his parents, you know, his parents were kind of like against him going out there and all that. And when they finally saw his guitar on TV, maybe it was Jeff Beck. I can't remember, but it was on TV.
Maybe it was Jeff Beck. I can't remember.
I can't remember. But anyway, he was talking about his parents finally seeing something on an award show. And it was his guitar, right?
Yeah.
And his parents finally kind of he finally made it. He finally did something, you know.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah.
He had some great stories, man. But they were everybody was into to like build after Eddie. I don't know if it was all after Eddie because the Charvel thing, what was like 79?
Yeah, 78.
Right 79. After Eddie, and it kind of took off right then.
And I'd have him make me guitars. I'd want, you know, a certain configuration or a certain color, whatever. And I loved the guitar, but I just couldn't get into the necks. They were too wide and flat, and they just didn't let me be, you know, what a real Strat, or especially what a Les Paul would allow me to do.
Right. And
I always tell, in fact, he'll probably remember this, but I remember we were out there and I'm trying to remember what I was doing out there. It might have been Don Dawkin with me or something, but anyways, and I kept telling Grover, I go, Grover, why don't you make a Stratocaster body, but with a Gibson scale neck on it? You know, for people that don't have huge hands. And also, why don't you put a 22nd fret on there? You always have 21 like Fender. I go, look at that neck right there. And before they shave off the where the butt of it is, the fretboard hangs over the thing. I go, you got plenty of room right there for another fret. You could probably put 2 on there. And he picked up the neck, goes, man, that's a good idea, man. I stop everything. So they stopped everything and they started putting that extra fret in there. So now they had 22 frets on a Strat neck. Well, that was my idea that he took.
Wow.
And he confirmed that when I saw him out at the NAMM show, because I've been telling my friends that was my idea. And there's been quite a few ideas. Like I was really good friends with Aspen Pittman,
Yeah.
and he was a genius and a marketing guru. I mean, just amazing. He could sell anything.
Mhm.
But I remember, and he was a big supporter of mine too. And I ended up being his amp tech for the last, I don't know, 15 years before he died or whatever. But I remember years ago, we were out at the factory and we're hanging out in his office, just shooting the shit. And I go, I got an idea, but I don't know how to do it. I go, you could take like a T thing where you plug it into the tube socket. You've already got all the voltage you need. Split it up instead of adding another tube and drilling another hole. Just have two tubes mounted on it with one, 9-pin mini socket going into the tube socket, and just voice it the way however you want. You can get as much gain or whatever. You can put a volume control on it, and that way it would be. And he goes, man, that is a great idea. Well, he tried to do, but he couldn't do it. But I think he got somebody else to do it, and they started marketing it, but they didn't market it right. And I think George Lynch now through.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah, he has that it's like an add-on tube.
You just plug it in, and you got another extra tube in the game. But that was originally my idea that I came up with, but I didn't know how to do it. I just knew it could be done.
Right.
And
right.
I miss Aspen. I miss him so much.
Yeah, I met him years ago. One of the lore of one of his heads, and you'd know this head probably if you were really close with Aspen, was the purple Marshall he had.
Yeah.
And an old 70s or 60s, I think.
That George, I think 68 or 69. And George used one of the.
Apparently, George wanted to steal it forever.
Yeah. Once in a while, you get a Marshall head that's just got that magic, like that one Collins got, that white one.
Yeah.
He brought it over to my house the other day. I put a master volume in it for him, a real master volume. Right. But he brought it over to the house the other with a cabinet he had just bought and plugged in with his thing, and we set it up in my patio. And he plugged it in, and it was Van Halen. I mean, it was that sound.
Wow.
It sounded so wonderful. I couldn't believe it. And that kid's amazing. I mean, he is like so into it.
He told me, he didn't tell me he was 18 for a while.
Yeah.
Then he goes, I'm 18. I'm like, you're 18? He goes, Van Halen's my life. I was like, all right, man. 18. Yeah.
He brings stuff to me all the time to fix and go through and make straight, but he finds the rarest stuff. And this kid, I don't know how if I had that kind of drive and that money behind me when I was a kid, but he did it all himself. His parents don't give it to him. He wheeled and dealed and bought and sold and traded. And he's got, he knows what he wants. He does all of the homework on it. And he just gets the best stuff and the rarest. I bought heads off him for myself. I still have stuff that you can't even find locally. He'll fly him in from Europe. Wow. If he finds it, he's amazing.
Finding those old Marshalls like that's an amazing head. I mean, it's.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's he and I are talking about a way to get that out there and let people hear that. Pete Thorne is a big YouTuber and
big time.
But Pete, but I think Pete and him are going to try to do something together.
Cool.
With that head.
Yeah.
That'd be a really cool story to see the lineage of that.
Totally. Yeah, totally stock except for the master volume I put in it. It sounds like God. Sounds like God.
EL34?
He's got 68.7s in it now, but it was EL34s.
Yeah, because that's what Eddie used, the 68.7s. Yeah,
that's what I used to.
Do you?
Yeah. I just went back to Marshall. I've always had Marshall amps. I got 5 complete stacks and I got 9 heads, but I was using PV 5150s and 6505s just because I didn't care if they got hurt on the road, and they sounded good enough, So I plugged in my old Marshalls a little while ago, and a Marshall of all things, a JCM 900 came into my shop. A guy brought in 3 amps, and he didn't want to pay to get them fixed. He goes, well, how about I just give you one of my amps, pick any one of these amps instead of me giving you money because I'm on vacation. I really need my money in my pocket. And I remember how good the JCM 900 sounded. So I go, I'll take the Marshall. I mean, if you want, he goes, that's fine. So I got that amp and I took it to rehearsal and I played to it and I put my, lexicon through the effects loop. But man, this is the sound right here. This is exactly the sound of Luber. So I ended up buying 2 more of them. One of them came to me through the shop, real good price. And another one I got, I don't know, I did some deal with somebody with something else. But anyways, got them like almost free, and I used them at the record release party at the club. everybody was just like, dude, your guitar tone's just off the hook. This is crazy.
You know what?
I point to the guitar and go, yeah, listen to them. They're really something, aren't they? Yeah, nothing to do with these, you know, or a million years of practicing this stuff.
Right.
But
You know
they
what?
do sound great.
I used to work in retail. That's how I ended up going to all the NAMM shows over the years. And I did a deal with somebody at the store for $150 for my Marshall, 77 Marshall. $150.
Good boy. Good boy.
You know what's in it right now is this was the period in '77 when they brought them over without tubes in them, I think, and they tubed them in the U.S. and they were tubing them
65s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got the Groove Tube 6550s in it.
Yeah.
It freaking kills, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I ended up getting a guy. A friend of mine said, "Hey, there's a guitar in the God, I can't remember that. It wasn't the It was like Green Sheet or some local nonsense paper. But a friend of mine called me up with a phone. He goes, call this guy's got a Marshall. He's right down the street from you. So I call him up. It's $1,500. I get to his house. It's been in his garage for like 20 years, rolled up in a bedspread. He had it rolled up in a bedspread and folded over. And so we unroll it and instantly blowing fuse. As soon as you plug it in, instantly blowing fuse. 74 Marshall had really great condition. 1,500. I got him down to $350. Gave him the $350. I brought it home. It had a broken output tube. That was it. I pulled that tube out, put another 6550 in there, turned it on. It sounded amazing. Then I took those tubes out, put some 6CA7s and rebiased it. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But yeah, those deals are getting harder to get and harder to get because Marshalls are going for, $200 to $3,500 now.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So what do you think of like Dave Friedman's amps and those?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've got a small box.
Amazing.
And
I get them in the shop every once in a while. Somebody will bring one in for me to bias or, just check the tubes or whatever, just do a general service. There's never anything really wrong with them. None of the ones I've seen. And every time I turn them on and start playing, I don't want to give it back to the guy. They sound amazing. Straight in, just wow. I mean, they are voiced just what a guitar player like I want to hear.
Right.
And obviously you too, you got these guitars behind you and stuff. And
oh yeah, man, I've got too much.
I know what you like.
That's what I said.
What you're into.
Ask you about Pasadena too, because I was talking to somebody the other day about. When I was talking to Brad Tolinsky and Chris Gill. Chris, is a native out there, and he was saying that the area that Roth family lives in was like the Bel Air of the time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, across town, a lot of the immigrants came in. I guess, I don't know if it was the cost of living was fair or what, but it seemed like
it was an old part. It was an old part of Pasadena. So it was the lower income because they were older homes, and people were a lot of rental properties and stuff, unlike where David Roth grew up, where his dad was a doctor. I mean, it is literally like the Beverly Hills of that area. It really is. I mean, it's beautiful over there. I have some friends that live over there, and it's like, these are palatial estates, just amazing.
It's right down the street. Actually, it's only a couple miles from Eddie's house. It's not that far.
No.
But the difference in for Eddie coming over as an immigrant with nothing, basically, and then they're over there at Dave's mansion, it had to be crazy. So you said you went over to his house. What were you doing over at his house, at Eddie's house?
Rehearse. Oh, at Eddie's. Oh, the first time, actually, I was only at his house once. But me and my band, after we'd play gigs or go out for the evening, we used to go to this club called the Wood Sound. And I knew where he lived because Chris Holmes had told me where he lived. Mm-hmm. So we found out where that was, and we would wait at the end of his alley at the other end of the block, waiting for this little Peugeot to come in. And we would be there, like, we'd drive by, and if the car wasn't there, we knew we'd be coming home probably. So we would wait. We just hang out in my 67 VW camper at the end of the alley, and we'd wait till, and so this one night, we see this little Peugeot coming in. It stops right in front of his gate. He gets out, he opens the gate. He goes, and I pull out. I go, Eddie. And at first, he didn't know who the hell we were. He didn't know if he was going to get beat up or what, I go, no, we're fans, man. We're big fans, And so he goes, well, come on in. Well, let's talk, whatever. So we went in and we stood in front of him, and he had a black leather jacket. It was cold. I remember him sitting there like this, and we're talking for about 45 minutes. And I was just, dude, man, I'm going to get sick. I got to go in the house, man. We got a recording session tomorrow. He goes, I'll tell you what, you guys are cool. If you want to come down to the recording studio tomorrow, and I think it was Sunset Sound, he goes, we're going to be recording tomorrow. If you want to come in, then we'll be there from like 3 o'clock on. So me and the guys are on, we're in heaven. We're going to go watch Van Halen record, you know, and they were doing the second record. And so, you know, obviously the next day we're at Sunset Sound. They buzz us in. We're here to see Van Halen. We're friends with Eddie. We told them we're friends with Eddie. And so they get us in, and then Dave comes out. And he goes, oh, what do you guys want? And we go, well, Eddie said we could come down. He goes, well, we're doing vocals. I go, yeah, Eddie said we could come down and sit in if you know, not sit in, but listen. He goes, well, I'm doing vocals, and I'm saying you can't come in. So he's basically telling us to get the hell out of here, you know? Right. So we kind of looked at each other. We're not going to argue with Dave Roth. He's our hero, you know? Right. And so we get in the car and we just start laughing. We just talked with Dave Roth and he kicked us out. And we thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then about 6 months later, or 3 months later, we were playing at a place called the Wood Sound all the time in Monrovia. And the owner and I became pretty good friends. And my sisters used to hang out there. And Dave Roth would show up and Eddie would show up. And for a while there, Ian Gillan was hanging out with my sisters and their friends. It was all really, you know, hot chicks. And he would be buying them drinks all night and hanging out, telling stories. And they just loved him, thought he was just so great. But Dave would be in there. And my sister would go, hey, you know, like the next day, you know, he'd be telling, yeah, Dave Roth came into the club, man. He was so cool, man. And man, you know, this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, man, why am I never there when they're there? So I called up Phil, the owner. I go, man, next time Dave or Eddie's in there, give me a call, man. You know, so a couple of weeks later, I get this call, and Phil goes, Greg, Eddie's coming in tonight. Just as soon as you come in, just go straight into my office because we'll be in the office. He said he's on his way down. So I get ready and I race down to Monrovia, which is probably 20 miles away. Go in there, I knock on the door. And who is it? Door opens up. They let me in. They're doing lines in there. So they're partying away. I sit down and who am I to say no at this point? You know, I'm in starstruck. There's my, you know, the best guitar player on the planet at the time. And there's a guitar in there. So Eddie and I back and forth with the guitar for hours. We're doing lines. And I mean, this was back when nobody knew how bad that shit was for you. And I'm just happy to be in the same room with this guy, you know, and I put my hand up. I go to Eddie, let me see how big your hands are. And he puts his hands up and we put our hands together and we aligned this last line right here. And our fingers were the same size. His were a little bit skinnier than mine, but the fingers were the same length. But he was just so much dexterity. He could, you know, and he just had that thing, you know, that
and
thing.
We were just talking about that. We were talking the Brad Tolinsky and Chris. We were talking about his hand size because, you know, he did the rock walk thing, right?
Yeah.
With his hands in it, and I went there to check it and see how his hands. And they're the same size as mine. Not really huge hands, but a lot of stretch. He even says that in this new book that they put out, where Eddie was talking about his hands. And that his thumb actually got a little deformed, and then he had to have that surgery on one of his fingers.
Yeah.
And but the surgeon guy said, "What?" Or orthopedic guy, "What is wrong with your thumb?" Because apparently he had just whacked it into submission over the years. And,
wow.
Yeah, it's some crazy stuff, but yeah.
So I remember that, and that was like a highlight. I mean, because I never got to meet Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
You know, I've met all of my heroes I never met Richie Blackmore either, unfortunately. I hope that happens. But I mean, I spent a day in the studio playing guitar with Rick. I know Rick Derringer. I almost got the gig when Danny Johnson left. I was dating Linda Blair at the time, the Exorcist chick.
Oh yeah, I've heard. You know,
she was best friends with Liz Derringer, his ex-wife.
Okay.
And they had me the gig in the band, and it just never happened because he decided he was going to start producing, and he went with Cyndi Lauper and stuff, and that just didn't happen. But
crazy.
Yeah, crazy. A million close calls for me. Wow. You know, it's like
that time that you hung out with him, was it like 80 or 79? What year was that?
With what?
When you were playing and going back and forth with your hands.
Oh, probably 79 or 80. When probably 79. Probably it was right before their second record came out because they were in the studio recording it.
Yeah, so 79.
And but yeah, that was I mean, I remember sitting in there just going, man, I can't believe I'm sitting here with Eddie Van Halen. And he was totally cool. No airs about him. We're just sitting there playing guitar and back and forth, and he's noodling the whole time, never, you know, and I'd take the guitar and noodle a bit. And Phil was just excited to have Eddie there, and they played us all the time. Danny Johnson's wife was booking the club at the time, so they loved us, and anytime we wanted to play, we're in there. We always do a good crowd, man. It was just a fun time.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing like that happens anymore that I know of.
It's so different, man. And you know, I saw this big change in about 2008, where you know we started getting all the internet stuff, and it just sort of like too much competing
Yeah.
stuff. Too, you know, it became a thing now where I've got to do special events to get anybody there, and
Yeah. Too
you know,
many options, and everybody's this nowadays. They're all
yeah.
looking at their damn phone.
It's so hard to get people excited about coming to a show, you know. And that's used to
Yeah.
be, like you said, it was the greatest time because everybody went to shows. That's what we
Yeah.
did. We
That's
went
what
to
we did.
shows.
It was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well, you keep rocking, brother. Thank you
Oh,
for
yeah, you too. You as well.
giving me the time today, and I'll
All
put
right.
this together for you and put it out there, and I'll send you some links.
Right on, man. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you, brother. If I need any amp stuff, I'll let you know.
Let me know. I'm here.
You're the amp man.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Okay,
Uh-huh.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.